everyone. It's Kathleen Rose, and this is the Presidential Podcast. So I think this is the first presidential podcast for the spring semester, and even though it's March, haven't had the opportunity to sit down and record a podcast, but I'm really excited about today's podcast. We have Julian Kearns, who's going to talk to us about all things economics and about his work teaching economics both face-to-face and online. And Julian's really a world traveler, so I'm really excited about talking with him a little bit about what he does internationally in his travels. And then we also have Elizabeth Williams. Elizabeth is a student here at Gavilan, and her story is really an interesting one in terms of how she got to Gavilan and why she chose Gavilan. I'm anxious to have her share that with you. She's also a triplet, and so she's got an interesting story to tell about her life's journey and coming to Gavilan. And then, of course, we'll have the segment of What's on My Mind, and I have some things to share with you about that. But before we get started, there's been a lot of things, of course, in the world news events that have caused all of us to feel very somber. The school shootings in Florida, the world events, the Me Too events, the things that have caused us to think about our place in the world and using our voice. And one of the poets that's very close to me is Mary Oliver. And I'm sure many of you who have studied poetry and studied literature here at Gavilan and beyond, or philosophy, have read Mary Oliver. She recently put out a collection of her poetry in a book called Devotions. So I was looking through that, and I thought I wanted to open this podcast with some of her words, because I think her words give us a lot of hope and a lot of perspective in trying to put the world's events into alignment with feeling. And so I wanted to read some of her words. I probably won't do the reading justice, but you could look it up in her volume, Devotions. And this work is called Don't Hesitate. Don't hesitate. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give in to it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this, in its way of fighting back, that sometimes something happens better than all of the riches or powers in the world. It could be anything, but very likely, you notice it can be instant, the very instant, when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not made to be a crumb. And that's a little poem by Mary Oliver to start out our podcast. When we come back, I'll be with Julian and Elizabeth to talk a little bit about their life journey. Stay tuned. Okay, so welcome back to the podcast, and the first guest I have today on the Presidential Podcast is Elizabeth Williams. And Elizabeth Williams is a student here at Gavilan, and she captured my interest way back when I first became Superintendent President at Gavilan, and I was going around the district doing coffee and conversations and getting to know people north, south, east, and west in the district. And one of our coffee and conversations was at GVA Coffee. And I walked into GVA Coffee and immediately met Elizabeth, who works at GVA Coffee. And Elizabeth came right up. She was very friendly. She had this smile that took over the room and said, "Oh, well, I'm going to Gavilan. I can't wait. I'm going to Gavilan." And I said to Elizabeth, "Well, I need to find out more about you and talk to me a little bit more about Gavilan." So I talked to her a little bit that day, and then we sort of disappeared from each other's lives. And then, sure enough, a few months later at campus, there was Elizabeth. Again, huge, wide smile on her face. going to school, and I said, "How's it going?" And she said, "Great, going to Gavilan, it's going well." And then disappeared, didn't see Elizabeth again for a while. And then, sure enough, a few months later, I see her in the Welcome Center. And what are you doing, Elizabeth? Well, I'm working in the Welcome Center. And so Elizabeth kept popping up on campus, and then other people are starting to tell me about Elizabeth. So Candace Whitney, the Director of Admissions and Records, is telling me about Elizabeth. And Kathleen Moberg, the Vice President of Student Services, is telling me about Elizabeth. And Ryan Shook, the Director of Student Life, is telling me about Elizabeth. And people are telling me about Elizabeth, and I'm thinking, I need to get to know Elizabeth because I know a little bit about your story, a little bit about why you may have chosen Gavilan, but I think our listeners would be really interested in knowing really why you did choose to come to Gavilan, because you're somewhat of a local person, but you could have gone anywhere and you chose to come to Gav, and your family story is kind of interesting. So fill us in, Elizabeth. How come you're here?
Well, so my educational journey as far as high school was a little bit rough. I went through a rough patch and kind of lost my ambitions towards education. Consequently, I ended up actually dropping out of high school. But that wasn't it for me. I wanted to continue to push myself. So I went to adult education in Morgan Hill and received my high school diploma there. And going back to college, I was super, super nervous. Like, it was something in high school that I didn't imagine myself doing. And I decided to sign up for Gavilan College, not knowing what to expect. And I was just like so anxious, so afraid, didn't know what I was getting myself into. And then I started taking a couple classes gradually and building up my confidence, and I fell in love. I rekindled in me a burning passion towards education and instilled my confidence and made me realize, I can do this. And my mind frame being so much more positive than how it was in high school, I ended up receiving straight A's, and I was no longer that troubled student that I was back in high school. And I think there's a point in time where you get addicted to self-improvement, and you get addicted to the feeling of coming home with good grades instead of bad grades and good news instead of bad news. And I decided I don't want to be not involved in campus. In high school, I was the person who didn't even want to go. I wouldn't come to classes. I was not into it at all, and I made a promise to myself where I would be involved. I would gain those experiences that I missed when I was in high school. And so I started doing little campus life things. I joined the Honor Society program. I ended up getting a job on campus as a peer mentor. My major is psychology, so through my own mental health and issues I was dealing with in high school, I fell in love with this subject, and I decided that I want to be someone on campus that other students can look to as a role model and someone that's positive and, maybe wasn't the best student before, but changed the mind frame and decided to be a better student for myself and those that I care about.
Well, so were there some defining moments for you that turned that switch for you?
I think that it was all gradual. Something that my mom always would tell me was baby steps. And so I took those baby steps, and I think taking those small steps, they end up becoming bigger and bigger.
So tell us a little bit about your family. Is your family supportive of your journey so far?
Oh, yeah, they're definitely supportive. I'm a triplet, so I have two sisters. One of them is identical and one is fraternal, and they were also kind of on the edge about going to college. And ever since I started and they saw that I could do it, the one that wasn't really into the education, they started coming to Gavilan too. My sister Christina, she's taking classes here and figuring out what she wants to major in. My sister Rachel just finished the vet assistant program through community education.
Oh, great.
And she's fallen in love with that. And it just all these people around me are deciding to make that change too and starting to come and take classes.
What has been the most surprising thing that you've learned about yourself in this journey so far at Gavilan?
I learned that what you focus on expands. So when I'm focusing on these positive things and how to make a positive difference around me, it just grows and it doesn't stop growing. When I was in this negative mind frame, there was like a collateral negative effect around me. But now that I've surrounded myself with positive influences and positive experiences, I've learned that I am capable.
So tell me about your work as a peer mentor. How has that been fulfilling for you?
I love being a peer mentor. It's absolutely amazing because I see people that were anxious just like I was. They were like afraid to start at the college, not sure how to learn the ropes and navigating the college experience. And I'm able to use my own experiences and where I am now to support other students in making that transition and fulfilling their confidence and knowing that they can do it and it is achievable.
Mm-hmm. So where are you academically? Is this your first semester at Gavilan, second semester at Gavilan?
This is about, I think, my fourth semester at Gavilan. I am doing really well academically, and I believe I have 1 year left because I took so long to take my math placement test because I was super anxious about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm excited about it.
And so what about your major plans? What would you like to do with your major in psychology? Of course, as you know, my major was also in psychology at one point. So what do you hope to do with that?
Well, I would just want to keep on going and keep on pushing. My ultimate goal is to one day achieve a doctorate in psychology and do clinical work and affect others' lives the way that my psychiatrist affects my life.
Would you like to work in a specialization area having to do with anxiety or addiction or family services, individual? You said clinical.
Yeah, I think I would focus more on mental health, whether it be depression or anxiety.
Mm-hmm. So for new students coming in, what would be some tips you would give them to navigate through the first few weeks at Gavilan or things that you would like them to know about the college?
I think don't be afraid to ask for help. One thing I learned is everybody just wants to see you succeed. I would go into the Welcome Center and try to meet up with a peer mentor and see what advice they have to offer. And, going in and making those steps for yourself, it'll make a big change and you'll feel more confident about doing it. And they'll teach you all the ropes and it'll be less of an anxiety.
Anything you'd like to see us improve upon overall at the college that you think we could do better?
No, I mean, I'm in love with Gavilan. Like, I'm really happy about my experience here.
Good. So I on the podcast lately, I've been talking about things that our listeners might be able to resonate with in terms of changes we'd like to see in the world overall. We're trying to create the environment here where we can explore world change as well as local, state, national change. What kinds of things do you think our students ought to be thinking about or conversations we should be having on campus to help to promote change in the world?
Well, I myself am obviously a mental health advocate, and I think that when you have a broken arm, like people come running towards you, they want to sign your cast, but when you're broken inside, people run the other way. I want to break that boundary and be able to talk about what's going on in our lives and how we dealt with it and be there for each other instead of being afraid of it. I want to be able to advocate and talk about mental health and how we can make a difference in that area.
Mm-hmm. Me too. I think we've started that here at the college and certainly with Alice Dufresne-Reyes and the Mental Health Committee. And I think you are involved in that.
Yeah, I'm actually about to start on the next committee meeting.
Good.
I'm excited.
We have really increased our mental health services here on campus. I started the podcast with reading a poem by Mary Oliver, who's one of my favorite poets, and I think we've all been following the events throughout the country with the shootings in Florida and gun control conversations. And here at the college, we want to continue to have conversations about safety and about mental health issues. And no doubt for me, with students like you and advocacy opportunities on campus, we will continue to have those really important conversations. There's no need to be silent about it. There's no need to have any of that go into the shadows. And I know with students like you and others, we'll continue to have those conversations in a really positive and vibrant and proactive way. So anything else you'd like to add about your experience at the college or anything you'd like our listeners to know about you or the psychology major?
I think a lot of students are afraid to come to college because they don't know what they want to do or what they want to major in. I had a professor here at Gavilan that taught me there's two things that you don't look for in life. That's a soulmate and a career. Those things kind of just find you. And once you start taking your general ed, you'll stumble across a class that you fall in love with, and then it's just all goes from there.
That's very sage advice. Well, Elizabeth, I really appreciate you coming in and talking to me on my podcast today. And I look forward to continuing to see you and your huge smile on campus, because it always brightens my day whenever I see you. And I know that you represent what's best about the college. And so thank you very much for coming to the show today.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Okay, so welcome back to the podcast. It is my distinct pleasure to be here with Julian Kearns. So Julian is our full-time faculty member in economics, and I'm really happy to have him on the podcast. So Julian has been here at the college for how many years?
This is my 7th year.
7th year at the college. And so we hired Julian when I was a VP of Academic Affairs, and I remember I distinctly remember the hiring process with Julian. We were so excited to have Julian say yes to Gavilan College. I personally was so excited when Julian said yes. Julian came to us already with a reputation for the work he did throughout the state, not only in his discipline of economics, but in faculty service, in student learning outcomes, program learning outcomes, and beyond, in his work in Southern California. And when Julian chose to apply to Gavilan, I knew that we were going to kick, scream, claw, and do anything we could to get Julian to come to Gavilan. And gratefully, he said yes. And now, 7 years later, we've been managing to keep him. And so I'm really interested to have Julian on the podcast today, because economics is about as far afield from psychology as it can be. But as I've gotten to know Julian, I understand now that economics and psychology are actually pretty much intertwined in a lot of ways. And so, Julian, I'm really interested in this interview, so thank you for being here today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. So here's my first question. So why did you select economics initially as your field of study when you were going through graduate school? Why economics?
Well, I started out doing my undergraduate work in economics, and it was kind of a mistake. Well, I just backed into it. I met with a counselor at community college. I was a terrible high school student, and I went to a counselor at community college. She asked me, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Investment banker." I had no idea what those people did. I just knew they made a lot of money, frankly. And she said, "Here's your major, economics." And I fell in love with the field, but I really chose to pursue it in graduate school because I had the opportunity to do a little bit of travel. And I went to a few third world countries, and I saw the state of affairs there and the types of lives that people led. And I knew that the best hope for them to lift the masses, the hundreds of millions, billions of people out of poverty, is economic development. And so I went into graduate school to pursue that area so that I could try to, idealistically make people's lives better.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Wow. So why should every student at Gavilan College study economics? You have one of the highest enrolled FTE of any of our sections in macro and microeconomics at the college, and it's consistent. Your students stay in your classes, and so students come to this college to take you and take economics. So why should every student who gets a degree at Gavilan College take economics?
Well, economics as a field of study is essentially we study the use of resources, the allocation of resources. And people allocate their resources every day. You choose what to do with the limited hours in the day and the limited income that you may have available to you. And economics helps us be more efficient in the way we choose to use those resources, and really ultimately makes us happier. And isn't that what it's all about?
Wow. Yeah. So there you go. There's the thread between economics and psychology right there. Mm-hmm. And I've sat in your classrooms before, so I know that you create that crosswalk between the humanity of economics and the resource allocation of economics. So I'm not sure that I confessed this to you before, but maybe I did, that I got a C- in economics as an undergraduate student.
That's new information.
And that's because I think I was in a room of 100 other undergraduate students, and it was all chalk and talk, and it was all about looking at formulas, and it was looking at the macro aspect of it. It was nothing about having it become a personal connection. And so you have spent a lot of time talking with me about how information is presented in your classes, both through your face-to-face and now your hybrid and your DE platform. And you have done a phenomenal job of putting together your DE courses and your DE shell, and have worked really hard at making a convert out of me in terms of looking at eliminating the boundaries about how students get information about economics. So talk to me a little bit about what you've done with your DE courses.
Well, first of all, big picture, distance education is, I think, without a doubt, the single most exciting development and innovation to happen in education for millennia. Literally, we've been teaching face-to-face classes for thousands of years, and now we are applying the internet to it. And like all of the other areas in our society where the internet has changed things, education is going through a profound change here. In a classroom, I can create essentially one learning environment, but online I can create a myriad of resources for our students that allow them to really choose what works best for them for their particular learning style. And so in that way, it's much more student-centered. On top of that, they can do this at any time that works for their schedule, and so it's very, very exciting. There's just a tremendous amount to say about it.
So for economics specifically, for looking at the concepts in economics that can oftentimes be equated with trying to understand the real complexities of resource management, DE seems to be the way that you can break down the layers of economics in a way that students can really grapple with easier, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. There's a lot of different ways that we can present the information. If a student prefers the lecture approach, I can give my best lecture to a student every single time. They can rewind that lecture. They can do it at times that work for them. It's outstanding. I'm very excited about it. In addition to that, there are many other resources and tools on the internet that are available that are not available to me in a face-to-face class, at least not with the fluency that we can do it in the digital environment. Are
you finding that students are interested in national economic concepts that are happening right now, or more so like what's in my own pocketbook and what's going on with me domestically?
Well, I've found that students can be very much engaged in the national picture if they can see how it relates to their life. And that is actually probably the backbone of my teaching philosophy, is making economics, which can be, frankly, a dry topic if it's, depending on how it's taught, relevant to the students' lives. And that's what keeps them engaged. That's what keeps them staying in the class and coming back for more.
So you talked at the very beginning about the social relevance of your work and what drew you to economics to begin with. And now you've been here at Gavilan for 7 years, and as you know, we have a very diverse student population. And you see, I'm sure, in your very full classes, students from the entire spectrum of our district. So you've been here a long time. Obviously, this is a satisfying teaching experience for you.
Sure is.
Why Gavilan?
Well, big picture, first, community college for me, it changed my life. It gave me an opportunity to make whatever I wanted to out of my life. I told the counselor investment banker, and she immediately had a plan for me. Uh-huh. I could have said anything, and she would have had a plan for me. To me, community college is essentially the system by which our society fulfills the promise of the American dream. You can come here, we take everyone, and we have a plan to help you succeed and become anything you want to be. It's incredibly inspirational to me. So I'm just profoundly grateful to contribute to that mission and be a part of students' dreams. Here in our local community, I love our students. They are truly a very diverse group, but they bring a lot to the table and have just a wealth of experiences that inspire me and change me and how I teach every semester. So it's really a give and take in terms of learning experience.
And I know for you personally, you also keep that balance by going off on these really wild and often enviable to me world travel adventures whenever you, and you come in and you tell me about these adventures when you come back, and yes, I'm always really super jealous, but you basically just sort of buy a ticket and go. So tell me about the one you just went on.
Well, what was it, 5-6 weeks ago, I got back from my trip to East Africa and the Middle East. I went to Kenya, Tanzania. I was in the United Arab Emirates in Dubai. I went to Egypt and spent some time in Jordan as well. And, it was great. I saw some incredible things. I mean, I saw Petra, which, is of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade fame. That was when I first saw what Petra was when I was about 9 years old. I saw the pyramids. It was just an incredible trip.
And it's not a scripted trip, right? You don't go with like a travel group, and you don't go with a group of, you just go.
No, I fly solo, and I just buy a ticket. I buy my ticket in and my ticket out, and I make the rest up as I go along.
Wow. And you bring those experiences back to the classroom for your students?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I especially enjoy my trips to what are, nominally communist countries. I say nominally because when you go there, it's all market transactions. Yeah. So, we have this big chunk of my class at the beginning where we're comparing different types of economies, essentially centrally planned or communist economies to capitalist. And I'm able to bring in a lot of real-world experiences and compare and contrast the two and tell stories of people that I meet in communist countries of what it was really like. Mm-hmm. And I think it really brings a lot of richness and context to what can otherwise be a sort of dry discussion.
Yes, definitely. I'm sure your students are fascinated by that.
They are. Sometimes I show them pictures and really bring them in, and I try not to brag too much about it, but it's a lot of fun.
But I bet they exchange also their own experiences, because you can bring in currency from other countries. You can talk about what the exchange is, mm-hmm. how people deal with money, how resources, revenue, that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And a lot of students have preconceived notions about what these places are like and what the people are like. And so we talk about all that, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I bet. So going forward, I know you and I have talked a lot about increasing DE, and there are definitely hopes with that as we go forward and become a part of the online education initiative. And your classes, as I understand, were the first 3 economics courses to be approved on the exchange?
Well, there were others on there, but I was actually the first instructor with 3 courses approved in the state.
In economics?
Well, 2 in economics, and then the statistics course, which is also an economics course here.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, it's very exciting. I'm thrilled to, just be growing our program, and, that brings all kinds of benefits to the college.
So what other hopes do you have for the college going forward? What would you like to see happen here?
The main thing I would really like to see happen here is for Gavilan to continue to be on the cutting edge of this profound change in education, which is distance ed. We're well positioned to do that. We have a large district, and a lot of times our students are spread out. Our students need these services. We have the capability to provide it for them, and I'm really excited to see the college continue to develop our capacities in that area and really make it happen for our students.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's no reason why that can't happen. We have a lot of opportunity for growth, and I think with the energy of faculty like you, there's no reason why we can't do that.
Well, it's really exciting. I'm glad to hear that you're supportive of our, approach and our plans and our ideas.
Well, and I think no doubt you will continue to come into my office and educate me on those things that I need to know more about, especially in your area.
If you provide me with a venue, I will show up.
Well, Julian, I really appreciate you coming in and talking with me on the podcast today. Is there anything else you'd like the listeners to know about the economics discipline, or anything else about your department?
Well, economics as a field, in terms of academic fields, is very young. We've only been studying economics academically this way really for the last 90 or so years. I mean, there were famous folks, Adam Smith in the 1700s, and thinkers, but really as an academic field, we're pretty young. So what that means is that there's a lot of room for people's contributions. If you're out there listening and, you're looking for some area that you can make meaningful contributions to that can really affect people's lives, come to economics, come to Gavilan. We will make it happen for you and inspire you and allow society to benefit from your contributions.
And you don't just have to be an investment banker.
No. I mean, that's one way that you can go, but there are a lot of different fields. I mean, think about how broadly the concepts can be applied. I mean, the allocation of resources. Every one of us does this every day, every business. I mean, in a sense, it's all allocation of resources.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Julian. I'm sure our listeners will be fascinated with your stories.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Kathleen. It's a great honor.
Okay, well, welcome back. That was really an enjoyable segment, speaking both with Elizabeth and Julian. They certainly represent what's fantastic about Gavilan, both from the faculty perspective and from our students. And that's why doing the presidential podcasts are such an enjoyable endeavor for me, and I hope to continue doing them for as long as we have listeners. So we will do another one later on this spring. So now this is the final segment, the What's on My Mind segment. And as you know, we continue to have the presidential forum, so please show up to those if you have things that you would like to talk with me about directly. Just as a reminder, we have the high school forums also occurring the week of March 12th. So check the website for the high school forums. We have 7 of them that we will be doing, and I will be at all the high school forums this year as well. And there are a number of other events occurring over the next couple of months for the balance of the spring semester, culminating, of course, with Commencement, which will be on Friday, the 25th of May. And if you haven't heard, we're taking Commencement outside this year. It's going to be on the soccer field. And we're determining right now what time of day it's going to be. We'd like it to be during the day, but we're taking a survey of students right now to see what would be the best time, either at 10 o'clock in the morning or 1 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd like to do it before 6 p.m. because of the traffic and congestion and everyone trying to get to campus at that time. So stay tuned for more information about graduation, but it's going to be outside, which is going to be a whole new thing for Gavilan. And hopefully great, because we won't have to give tickets out for everyone. So stay tuned for that. So what's on my mind? So if you remember at the Professional Development Day for the faculty members, I was talking about a book that I've been reading and that I have been talking with cabinet members and leadership council about. And I talked with the faculty about this book. And the book is called Principles by Ray Dalio. And I said at the Staff Development Day that if anyone has a birthday, they can stop by my office, say happy birthday, get a hug from me, and I will give you a copy of this book, Principles by Ray Dalio. So far, 2 of you have done that, so you've remembered. And so I've just ordered a bunch of the books from Ray Dalio, and I have them in my office. So he founded Bridgewater Associates in 1975, and so he was a very successful business person and made bazillions of dollars. But this book, Principles, is divided up into 2 halves. One half is on work-related principles, and the other half is on life-related principles. And what has really resonated with me about this book is that we know Gavilan, of course, is a place where we do meaningful work and where we have meaningful relationships. I know that to be true, and I think most of us know that to be true. And that's one reason why this book, Principles, has become such a powerful read for me. And so some of the things that they talk about in the book are principles of life that I think we all see and we all experience, and things that I would like us to think about as we go forward for the balance of this semester, as we wrap up our work together and prepare for the summer and next fall, as we think about a general obligation bond, as we complete facilities projects, as we look at student achievement, as we look at big state initiatives having to do with our funding formula, as we look at other big initiatives in instruction, as we look at other future vision for the college with guided pathways and beyond. And that is that we need to be radically open-minded and radically transparent. Dalio talks about that in his book. And what does that mean, radically open-minded and radically transparent? I think that means to be open, present, to show up, and be willing to have sometimes tough conversations. We've been willing to have that. Dalio also talks about how we need to embrace reality and we have to deal with it. We also have to understand that evolving is life's greatest accomplishment and its greatest reward. And I can certainly say in the almost 2 years now that I've been your college president, there's been a lot of evolution going on this campus. Just ask someone on campus and see what they can tell you about change. And then finally, we need to make sure and own our own outcomes and hold ourselves accountable. And we are certainly doing that in the assessment work, the outcomes work, and the ongoing planning we're doing, the integrated planning, culminating in the guided pathways work that you'll be hearing much more, continuing to hear much more about in the weeks ahead. So those things are on my mind. If your birthday's coming up, come on by my office, and I'll share with you a copy of Principles and talk with you more about Dalio's ideas, because I think they mirror our own philosophy that you will be reading more about as you see our new updated Principles of Community document that will be shared with the college in the weeks ahead as well. But for now, I hope you enjoyed the podcast, and I'll look forward to recording one again for you soon. If you're interested in being on the podcast, drop by my office. I'll add you to the list. Until next time, take care.